Mario again, coming at you with another movie review. As you can tell, another entry in childhood favorites. This is a film I reviewed once before on my previous channel, but I deleted the review because I thought I didn't do that good of a job on it. And then, of course, would have been gone anyway because of that channel going the way of the dodo. But felt it'd be a good time to review this film, especially since I just revisited via Netflix, which is still on there for those of you who want to give this film a watch. It, of course, is the 1963 film The Sword and the Stone. And, of course, I have my VHS copy here. I think, as you can tell from the condition that case is in, it's been through a lot. Like, let me take the copy out. See? See? A little tube there, and tape there. Yeah, it's one of those ones I probably should maybe ditch the case and just put the VHS by itself up there, but don't know if I will or not. But anyway, before we get into the film, I think I should talk about the rating it has. It has a 7.1 on IMDb, which for an animated film is a pretty good score. It has a 74 with the audience on Rotten Tomatoes and a 71 with the critics, and this is the consensus. A decent take on the legend of King Arthur, The Sword and the Stone suffers from relatively indifferent animation, but its characters are still memorable and appealing. I don't know what it fully means by indifferent animation. If there's any problem I have with the animation, it's that a couple times during the film the characters have super wide eyes. By super wide, I mean like this. Like, jumping Jehoshaphat, you know, like that. Other than that, I thought the animation is very good. Especially in the Wizard's Duel scene, which I will address. Anyway, another thing I'm going to mention before I get into the film is that from now on, when I do a review, recording it on my desktop, I'm going to be looking down or bring my cell phone into picture so that this doesn't lag and it doesn't give me the deep booming voice where it's all lagging and all that. No, like that. So I'll just look at this. Now, the film was directed by Wolfgang Reitherman, which I'm going to check real quick to see what other films he worked on. Oh, he died in '85. 3 years after he retired. And he was a famed animator, and he was one of Disney's 9 old men. Those are the guys that did a lot of the films during Disney's life and a little bit afterwards. He was an animator on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and other films like that. First film he directed was Sleeping Beauty. He also directed 101 Dalmatians. And one thing I don't like about navigating on the phone is that you have to be careful where you push. After this film, he also directed The Jungle Book, another childhood favorite of mine, The Aristocrats, Robin Hood, The Rescuers, and the last film he directed was The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And he also produced them. And the last film he's credited to is The Fox and the Hound, which he produced. The last film he was an animator on was Sleeping Beauty. Let's see. So he had a very prolific career, and it shows with this film. It was the screenplay was written by Bill Pete, or Pett. I don't know how it's pronounced. I'm going to guess Pete because it's P-E-E-T, so it's kind of hard for it to be Pett. I'm going to guess Pete. He also worked on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He also says here. Trying to see what else he did. I'm going to guess he wrote a lot. It says he wrote children's books, so I'm going to guess he wrote a lot. Worked on some of the Donald Duck shorts and on Pinocchio. It doesn't have a list like it did with Wolfgang, so I'm not going to spend my time going through it. If you want, you can probably look it up on IMDb. And it's based on the novel The Sword and the Stone by T.H. White, which is the first part in his Once and Future King tetralogy, which, let's see if I can spot it, because I do have a copy of the book. I don't have it in the front, dang. I do, like I said, I have a copy of it, but I have not read it. I've tried reading it, but I guess I just didn't get into it right away. I guess I was tired that night or something, but it's a book I really want to get into, because I do like the legend of King Arthur. I mean, I have read one other book of it, partially. I really love Monty Python's take on it. And of course, I have listened to bits and pieces of De Morte d'Arthur, if I'm saying it right, that poem about it. Haven't seen Excalibur yet, but I did like that show that they did a couple years ago on Starz Camelot, which I wish that show had gotten a second season. They set up Modred perfectly. But no, they couldn't have the actors, they couldn't get them together, so they just canceled the show. You could have just had the show on hiatus until you could have gotten them together. But no, you cancel it. Well, hopefully they uncancel it, but that's just me. Anyway, the movie was made on a budget of $4 million, which, with an animated film, it's kind of hard to gauge where the money's going to, a lot of it, or at least compared to a live-action film. But for the time, I could see it costing that much, mostly because of the animation. I mean, when you see how complicated some of the scenes are, you could probably see why it probably cost that much. And it made $22 million, which for the early 60s, 1963 to be precise, would have been a decent-sized gross. And as you can already tell, it has a good critical response. Now, like a lot of the movies at the time that Disney did, it is a musical, but it's a little different. It's not like the other ones where the characters all have their own musical numbers or something like that. Most of the singing is done by Merlin, and it's mostly during some of the lesson sequences. And like there's Higatus Ficatus, which is a spell scene, which is it's very catchy. Shrink in size, very small. We got to save enough room for all. That's What Makes the World Go Round, another fun Merlin song, but Arthur also has some lines there. A Most Befundling Thing, another one. Fun. Mad Madam Mim, probably one of the few songs not sung by Merlin or having his input. And then, of course, a song called Blue Oak Tree, sung by the Knights. Don't know what that is. Then the opening song, which is pretty good. A legend is sung of when England was young, when knights were brave and bold. That's a good song, good way to open the movie. But it doesn't, but like it's a little different, and I think it kind of fits the tone and structure of the movie, because the whole thing about the Sword and the Stone is Merlin. The plot is basically about Merlin and Arthur first meeting, Merlin beginning to teach Arthur, and eventually Arthur pulling the sword from the stone and becoming the king, and that's basically where it ends. I don't know if that's where the book ends, but that's where the film basically ends. And the film's only 79 minutes, so a little over an hour, so it does manage its time pretty well. Now, a few things, if you're not really familiar with the Arthur mythology, a few things at the beginning might be a little confusing. Like it mentions the king dying and there being no heir. Then we see that Arthur is the future king. It's like, how was this determined or whatever? Well, if you know anything about the backstory in the mythology, is that Arthur was Uther Pendragon's son, so by blood he is the heir. I think the book probably goes a little bit more into that. But I could see why they wouldn't mention it, because it's not really something you really need to mention, at least this early in the story. Maybe if they'd done a sequel, which I think it's a little funny that out of all the films that Disney did animated, out of their animated films from the 60s, this is one of the few that doesn't have a TV series, a sequel, I think a prequel as well, a live-action remake, or a platinum DVD. So it's funny thing about that last one, I don't know why they haven't done that, but the funny thing about the rest of them is that this film, you could do a live-action one. It costs a lot of money, probably, though. You could do a sequel because there is material, but if you know anything about Modred and all that stuff later, that'd be kind of weird for a Disney film. But then again, they didn't mention that when they did Hercules, so I guess they could do something similar. Now, the characters in the film, we got Merlin, of course, wizard. He has an owl named Archimedes. We got Arthur, of course, and then we got his foster father, and then we got his foster brother, Kay. Then we got a couple side characters like a knight named Pellinor, some random knights that we hear. Then we got a wolf that's in a couple scenes, and other random animals that are just in one scene. But the majority of the film, as I've said already, is Merlin teaching Arthur, and that's, I guess, the heart of the film is Merlin and trying to teach Arthur to be a good king, which at first it doesn't seem why he's teaching him all this stuff, but then by the end of the film, obviously, he's the king of all England, so he has a good teacher, and he's going to be taught to be a good king by Merlin. And the sequences, I think, are very interesting. All of them involve Merlin turning Arthur into some type of animal. We got First sequence, he turns him into a fish and they explore the moat. Second sequence, he turns him into a squirrel, they explore the forest. Last one, he turns him into a bird and Archimedes flies with him. It's a very fun premise. Though, if there's anything about it, is that the way some of the song lyrics are written, it does give the impression of being in school, which I'm guessing is why the meaning of the lyrics when I was a kid went over my head. But to counter that, it's just the way the words are put together, combined with the jingle of the lyrics, they're just so catchy that you can't help but love the songs anyway. It's just, rewatching the film, it's one of those moments like, oh, I get it now, because a lot of the lyrics that Merlin says are kind of, Neo, stuff like that. So as a kid, I didn't get them, but I can appreciate the lyrics more now, so I enjoy those songs a little bit more. And also I can appreciate the animation and how complex it is, especially in the Wizard's Duel. If I can find it on YouTube, I'll put it in the description box. It is a very fun scene to watch because of how the animation is. Because in the scene, Merlin and Madame Mim, who apparently is a rival magic user, who they seem to have they have a past with one another. They mentioned, but they never state what it is. This makes me wonder, like, did they know each other when they were younger or something? Did they learn magic together and then they had a falling out over differences in opinion of what magic should be used for? That's just my guess, anyway. And of course they have a Wizard's Duel, which is basically them turning into different things in an attempt to destroy one another. It's a very fun sequence. They're turning into different animals, Mim cheating a couple times. Then of course, how Merlin ends up winning, I'm not going to spoil, but it is a very fitting one. And for a desperation move, it is a pretty fun trump card. If you had magic and you could turn it into anything, you'd probably use this if you had to. And of course the night sequence near the end, the jousting thing, that's animated pretty well. I'd have to say it's probably one of my favorite animated films, especially from this time period. And it's one I'm like, why doesn't this have a platinum DVD? It should have a special edition DVD. Commentary with a film historian, maybe even a fan commentary. Voice acting wise, the voice actors do their jobs well. I'm gonna go look. Let's see. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna click the plot down so it doesn't interfere. Casting characters. Arthur is voiced by 3 people: Ricky Sorensen, Richard Reitherman, and Robert Reitherman. Why they had to use 3 instead of recording just 1, I don't know. But that's probably one of the few continuity things you can notice with the film, because you notice when the voice changes. Funny thing is, the most noticeable one is near the end, where it changes within one scene, where it goes from broken to unbroken and back to broken. It's like, huh? That was probably one of the few instances that I noticed something weird like that in the film. One of my early encounters with continuity. Then Merlin is voiced by Carl Swinson. He does a pretty good job. He does give off mysticism as well as intelligence with how he voices him. And he comes off as a guy that you'd really want to hang around if you wanted to learn. And the guy lived into 78. He died of a heart attack, so rest in peace. And he was a theater, radio, film, and television actor. I'm looking to see. Let's see, he was in Arthur Miller's first production of The Man Who Had All the Luck. This Is Your FBI, The Adventures of Father Brown. Looking for some more reads. The Man from Black Hawk, Riverboat, Johnny Ringo. He had made an appearance on the Andy Griffith Show. He played Nero in The Plot to Overthrow Christmas. He plays Lars Hansen in 40 episodes of Little House on the Prairie. And he was in an episode of Hogan's Heroes. So he had a prolific career as well. And I haven't seen any other stuff he was in, obviously, but he fit the character of Merlin. Madame Mim was voiced by Martha Wentworth, which for the scene she's in, she does a pretty good job, and her song scene is pretty well done. She died about 9 years later, but it looks like she had a legacy as well. Huh? I didn't notice. Apparently, she did some voice work in 101 Dalmatians as well. She played in that movie. She was Queenie the Cow and Lucy the Goose. And apparently this is her final credited appearance. Wonder if there was any uncredited ones. And sorry, that's my neighbor. She, according to her selected filmography, she was in I Love to Singa, and she was in the Frady Cat episode of Tom and Jerry as the woman in the Witching Hour program. That's all it's listed, so not as prolific as Merlin's voice actor, which, considering their roles in the film, is a little ironic. But she does a good job for what she has to do. Archimedes is voiced by Junius Matthews, and he does a pretty good job as the role. At first he's kind of a curmudgeonly owl, cranky owl, but it's later in the film he does open up a little bit and you begin to like the character a little bit more, especially when he bonds with Arthur during the flying scene. Then of course he becomes kind of friends with him during that, because he sees that the boy has talent for flying, and thus I guess he sees that the boy actually can learn. He's not, you know, like everyone else in the time period. Of course, he's also gone. Okay, he didn't become widely known until the last 10 years of his life. I can't believe I didn't pick up on this. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but he voiced Rabbit in the original Winnie the Pooh movies, produced from 66 to 77, including Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2, as well as a feature-length compilation film. And that's all the, let's see what else. Other things, he was in Black Angel, a 46 film. He did the voice of the fox in Mary Poppins. It's been a long time since I've seen that film, I guess. I wouldn't have caught up on it. Caught up with it. Caught it, excuse me. Raji in the film Gumby? I'm guessing. He fits the characters he's voiced him. Sir Kay, Arthur's brother, he's voiced by Norman Alden, and he does a pretty good job compelling the character, because characters, you know, like an older brother that doesn't like his younger brother, kind of a jerk. And I know later in the mythology, Kay became one of Arthur's trusted knights, so I could see with years going by that happening, but with this one it's like, okay, how does he become one of Arthur's knights? But since they were only doing the first part of the story, I guess that's why they did it. And at times you just want to smack him because of how much of a jerk Kay is, but you know, some knights probably would have been like that during the time, so it's kind of excusable. I'm not saying all of them were, but some of them. Let's see, other than this, he was in the TV show, the 20th Century Fox Hour. He had a notable role in I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. And he too is dead, apparently. He died in 87. Oh, am I reading it right? Oh, that's how old he was. He died last year, excuse me. He retired in 06, though. See other stuff he was in. The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin. The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. He voiced Kranix in the 86 Transformers film. He was the coffee shop owner in Back to the Future and the colorblind cameraman Bill and Ed Wood. Oh, he had some live action ones, so that's something interesting. We have to go back and get the sword in the stone. You know, I couldn't help resist doing a Back to the Future joke. Let's see any other voice actors. James McDonald as the wolf, which the wolf barely has any dialogue. It's mostly like, you know, grunt noises, so nothing more to talk there. The little squirrel girl was voiced by Ginny Tyler, which there's mostly just female squirrel noises, so nothing much to comment on. Nothing more comment on them. Pellinor was voiced by Alan Napier, which, if I think this is right, yep, it's the guy that played Alfred in the 60s Batman show, so I don't think I need to go further than that. He fits the character for what for the few scenes he's in, and there's a kind of a running gag with the character that he always gets his mustache wet and has to clean it, you know, like doing something like this. It's kind of funny, but not like, you know, like it's more like a little chuckle one. Let's see, there's one other character I want to talk about. I gotta find him. Sir Ector, that is Kay's father and Arthur's adopted father. His character, you can understand him a little bit. He's kind of a jerk at times, which is kind of stemming from the era that they live in, where, you know, knights, you know, were expected to have obedience and deference from their subjects, especially their children. Like, we get that in the scene after Actor and Kay found the dishes floating around, and then he's scolding Arthur when he comes in. And Sebastian Cabot actually did a very good job giving the character life with that. He died in 1977. What's with most of these actors dying in the late 1970s? Cause of his death was stroke. Other things, he was the narrator in The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. He voiced Bagheera in The Jungle Book. He was in the sitcom Family Affair. He played Dr. Carl Hite in Checkmate. He was in The Spider and the Fly, Terror in a Texas Town, The Time Machine from 1960, and the TV film Miracle on 34th Street. So he did some work. His characterization of Bagheera is more likable, obviously, but he does a good job with this one. Now, in conclusion, this to me is a Disney classic. It is a film from my childhood that does hold up. Is it a film everyone would like? Probably not. I know Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic, doesn't really like it that much, or at least, like, uberly loves it because of the fact that parts of the scene make it feel like it's in school. Each their own. Me, I know, I will say that might bother some people, but it doesn't bother me. Other than, the only other problem I could think of was the thing I mentioned where the eyes are drawn weird, but that's just one little nitpick with the animation. Other than that, nothing bad about it. Like I said, I thought the voice acting was very good. If anything, maybe Arthur could have had a little bit more personality, because he doesn't really have that much personality, except for one scene near the end of the movie where he does actually do a very good monologue where he's talking about why he wants to be a squire, because in that day and age, someone who's a nobody like him, or should I say, because of the plot at the end, nobody is lucky to be a squire to a knight. He pours out his heart and soul in that. Other than that, he's just an attentive student to Merlin, which is what he is in the novel, I guess. Maybe it's the translation from novel to movie, but that's probably my only complaint. Because I like Merlin, I like Archimedes, I like all the other characters. The story is investing. And it's not that long. It moves at a pretty good pace for a 79-minute movie, and the animation, especially, like I mentioned in the Wizard's duel scene, is very good. So it's a film I do recommend if you love Disney animated films. Whether you like it or not, that's your prerogative, but it does get my recommendation. And I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars.